My name is Rebecca, and I'm 28 years old. I had flown home to Seattle to spend Thanksgiving with my parents, or so I thought now, trying to return to Denver where I worked as a pediatric nurse. I found myself stuck. With trembling hands, I pulled out my phone. 2 messages waited for me. From Mom, "Have fun walking home, loser. Hope you enjoyed your little visit." From Dad, "Stop acting poor. Take a bus like you should. We're not your personal ATM anymore." My cheeks burned with shame as other passengers glanced my way. I stepped away from the counter, clutching my small carry-on bag, fighting back tears. I tried to understand what had just happened. You see, my parents, Richard and Patricia Monroe, had always been difficult. They lived in a beautiful home in an expensive neighborhood and measured success purely by bank accounts and status. When I chose nursing over law school, their disappointment became a constant presence in my life. They had paid for my ticket home but apparently decided to teach me some kind of lesson by canceling my return flight. Their text messages made it clear this was intentional. This was their way of showing disapproval of my life choices. I sat down in a quiet corner of the terminal, my mind racing. A bus ticket would take most of my emergency savings, and the journey would take over 20 hours. I had a shift at the hospital in 2 days missing. It wasn't an option, not when the children's ward was already short-staffed. "Excuse me, dear, are you all right?" I looked up to see an older woman, probably in her early 60s, with kind gray eyes and silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wore a simple navy cardigan and carried herself with quiet dignity. Something about her gentle expression made my carefully constructed composure crumble. "I'm sorry," I said, wiping my eyes. "I'm fine, really. You don't look fine," she said softly, taking the seat beside me. "I'm Dorothy Chen. Would you like to talk about it?" Maybe it was her grandmother warmth, or maybe I just needed to tell someone, but the whole story came pouring out: the canceled ticket, my parents' cruel messages, my job waiting in Denver, the impossible choice between my savings and my responsibilities. Dorothy listened without interruption, her face reflecting genuine concern. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "How much would a ticket cost right now?" she finally asked. "About $400. I said, checking my phone, but I couldn't possibly ask. "You didn't ask," Dorothy said firmly. "I'm offering my husband. James and I are flying to Denver ourselves. We have more than enough, and it would be our pleasure to help." I can't accept that, I protested, even as hope fluttered in my chest. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," Dorothy said, standing up. "I know you're a nurse who cares about her patients. I know you chose a life of service over money. I know your parents should be proud of you instead of treating you this way. Come on, let's get you a ticket." Before I could argue further, she was walking toward the ticket counter. I hurried after her, still protesting. But Dorothy was determined. Within 20 minutes, I had a boarding pass for a flight leaving in 2 hours. Dorothy had charged it to her credit card, waving away my promises to pay her back. "Consider it a gift," she said. "James and I are retired teachers. We saved carefully, and now we use our money for things that matter. You matter." I met James when we gathered at the gate. He was a tall man with wire-rimmed glasses and a warm smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. When Dorothy explained what happened, he nodded approvingly. "Good," he said simply. "That's what neighbors should do for each other, even strangers." We sat together waiting to board, and I learned their story. Dorothy and James had been married for 38 years. They had taught at an inner-city elementary school for decades, often spending their own money on supplies and food for students who needed it. They had raised 3 children who were now scattered across the country doing good work of their own. "We didn't have much when our kids were growing up," Dorothy said, "but we had enough. We taught them that success isn't measured by your salary. It's measured by the lives you touch, the kindness you show." "That's beautiful," I said quietly. "Your parents may not see it yet," James added, "but you're living a life of real value. Those children you care for, they need you. That matters more than any corner office or fancy car." When we boarded, I found myself seated near them. The flight attendant, a woman named Susan who looked to be in her late 50s, noticed Dorothy and James immediately. "Mr. and Mrs. Chen," she exclaimed warmly. "It's wonderful to see you again." Susan. Dorothy beamed. "How have you been?" As they chatted, I learned that Susan's daughter had been one of their students years ago. Dorothy had helped her daughter get glasses when the family couldn't afford them. James had tutored her in reading every afternoon. for a year. Now the daughter was a teacher herself. They changed my daughter's life. Susan told me later when she stopped by our row. Some people just have that gift of seeing others, really seeing them. During the flight, Dorothy shared more stories, not boastfully but in response to my questions. They had helped pay for a former student's college tuition anonymously. They had taken in a teenager whose parents had kicked him out. They had spent their retirement volunteering at homeless shelters and food banks. We're not special, Dorothy insisted when I called them remarkable. We just do what we can with what we have. Everyone can do that. I thought about my own life, the double shifts I worked, when the children's ward was understaffed. The way I sometimes bought groceries for families I knew were struggling, the art supplies I kept in my locker to help my young patients express their fears and hopes. You remind me that I made the right choice. I told them both, even when it's hard, the right choices often are hard. James said, that's how you know they're right. Easy choices don't require courage. As we began our descent into Denver, Dorothy reached over and squeezed my hand. Rebecca, I want you to promise me something. Anything, I said. Don't let your parents' inability to see your worth diminish it. You are valuable. You are making a difference. The measure of a life well lived isn't in a bank statement, it's in the hearts you've touched, the healing. You've brought the love. You've shared. Tears streamed down my face. But this time they were different. These weren't tears of shame or hurt, these were tears of recognition, of being truly seen. When we landed, James insisted on sharing their taxi into the city. Even though it meant a small detour, they wanted to make sure I got home safely as we drove through the familiar Denver streets. I felt something shift inside me. My parents' rejection still hurt, but it no longer defined me. Dorothy and James. These beautiful strangers had reflected back to me the truth. I sometimes forgot I was living a life of purpose and meaning. They dropped me at my small apartment building. James helped carry my bag to the door. Dorothy hugged me tightly. You have our number, she said. Call us if you need anything, and call us anyway. We'd love to hear how you're doing. I will, I promised. I can't thank you enough. Then don't try. Dorothy smiled. Just pay it forward when you get the chance. That's all the thanks we need. I watched their taxi pull away, then climbed the stairs to my apartment. It was small and modest. Nothing like my parents' grand house, but it was mine, earned through my own work, filled with things I loved. The next morning I returned to the hospital. The children's ward was chaotic. As always, I moved through my shift, tending to scared kids and worried parents, using humor to ease fear, using gentleness to build trust, using skill to bring healing. During my break, I texted Dorothy and James, letting them know I was home and back at work safely. Dorothy responded immediately with a heart emoji and words of encouragement. Over the following weeks, we stayed in touch. They sent me articles. They thought I'd enjoy recipes. Dorothy had tried photos from their volunteer work. I sent them updates from the hospital, always changing names and details but sharing the small victories that made my job meaningful. Then one day, about a month after our meeting, I received a package. No return address. Inside was a beautiful framed quote in Dorothy's careful handwriting. The purpose of life is not to be happy. It is to be useful, to be honorable, to be compassionate, to have it make some difference that you have lived and lived well. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Below in smaller letters, she had added, You are living this truth, Rebecca, every single day with pride and love, Dorothy and James. I hung it on my wall where I would see it every morning. My relationship with my parents remained strained. They couldn't understand why I wouldn't quit nursing and pursue something more prestigious. In their eyes, we spoke rarely, and when we did, the conversations were tense. But I had found something more valuable than their approval. I had found my own sense of worth, validated by people who truly understood what mattered. The following Thanksgiving, I didn't go home to Seattle. Instead, I volunteered at the shelter where Dorothy and James worked. We served meals to over 300 people that day, each one with their own story, their own struggles, their own inherent worth. Dorothy and James introduced me to their children who had flown in for the holiday. I could see immediately where they had learned their values. All three worked in helping professions: a social worker, a public defender, and a special education teacher. Mom and Dad taught us that we're all connected. Their oldest daughter explained as we washed dishes side by side that taking care of each other isn't charity, it's just what humans should do. As the day wound down, I found myself sitting with Dorothy and James in a quiet corner of the shelter. Both of them looked tired but deeply satisfied. "Thank you for this," I said, "for everything, for seeing me when I felt invisible." "Oh, Rebecca," Dorothy said, taking my hand, "you were never invisible. You shine so brightly. How could anyone miss it?" "My parents did," I said, though the pain had dulled to a distant ache. "Then they weren't it really looking." James said gently, "Some people are so focused on the wrong things. They miss what's right in front of them. That's their loss, not yours." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching volunteers clean up and guests prepare to leave for the night. The shelter was warm and full of laughter, despite the cold November evening outside. "You know what I've learned," I said slowly. "Love isn't always found where we expect it sometimes. Family isn't blood, it's the people who show up for us, who see us, who remind us of our own worth." "Exactly right," Dorothy nodded. "James and I have been blessed with biological children who we love deeply, but over the years we've also collected other children, young people who needed someone to believe in them. You're one of ours now, Rebecca, whether you like it or not." I laughed through sudden tears. "I like it very much. Years have passed since that day at the airport. I'm 32 now, still working in pediatric nursing. I've been promoted to head nurse of the children's ward, and I love my work more than ever. Dorothy and James have become my chosen family. We celebrate holidays together. They come to my apartment for dinner. They've met my friends and my colleagues. They've attended hospital fundraisers as my guests, cheering me on. My biological parents and I have reached a sort of peace. We exchange cards on birthdays and holidays. Sometimes we talk on the phone. The conversations are still somewhat stilted, but the anger has faded on both sides. They may never understand my choices, but they've stopped openly criticizing them. That's enough for me, because I know my worth now, not because someone gave it to me, but because someone helped me recognize it in myself." Last month, a young woman approached me at the hospital. She was visiting her nephew who had been in a serious accident. She looked exhausted and scared. When I brought her coffee and a warm blanket, she broke down crying. "I'm sorry," she said. "It's not just my nephew. My car broke down yesterday. I missed a day of work. I can't afford the repairs. I don't know what to do." I sat with her. Let her talk. Let her be afraid and overwhelmed before she left. I slipped an envelope into her hand. Inside was enough money to cover her car repairs and a note. "You are not alone. You matter. Pass it forward when you can." She called the hospital the next day asking for me. When we spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. "Why would you do this for a stranger?" she asked. "Because someone once did something similar for me." I said, "Because we're not really strangers. We're all just people trying to get by, trying to do good, trying to matter. It does matter." She whispered, "You have no idea how much." But I did have an idea, because I remembered standing in that airport feeling worthless and abandoned, until two beautiful strangers showed me a different truth. The measure of a life isn't in money or status or parental approval. It's in the moments of connection, the acts of kindness, the choice to see each other's humanity and honor it. Dorothy is 68 now. James is 70. They've both slowed down a bit, but they're still active, still volunteering, still spreading light, wherever they go. Last week, Dorothy called to tell me they're planning a trip to Europe in the spring, something they've always wanted to do. "We'd like you to come with us," she said. "If you can get the time off our treat, consider it a very belated repayment for that plane ticket." I laughed. "Dorothy, you know that ticket was paid forward 100 times by now. Then consider it a gift from parents who are proud of you," she said softly. "Because we are, Rebecca, so very proud." I had to pull over because I was crying too hard to drive safely. These were the words I had needed to hear all my life, not from the people I expected, but from the people who truly meant them. "I'll be there." I promised I wouldn't miss it for anything. As I sit here now writing this story, I think about all the people who have touched my life, the children I've cared for, who taught me resilience and joy, the families I've supported who showed me the depth of love, the colleagues who became friends, Dorothy and James, who became family. We spend so much time chasing the wrong things, status approval, money recognition, and sometimes we miss the simple truth that real wealth is measured in moments of human connection. That day at the airport felt like the worst moment of my life. My parents' rejection seemed like the final proof that I had failed at what mattered, but it turned out to be the beginning of something beautiful. A reminder that we find our people, not always where we expect them, but exactly when we need them. If you're listening to this and you feel unseen or undervalued or dismissed by people who should love, you better please know this. Your worth is not determined by their inability to recognize it. You are valuable. You matter, the work you do, the life you're building, the kindness you offer, it all counts. And somewhere out there are your people. The ones who will see you. Truly, the ones who will remind you of your own light. They might be strangers on an airplane. They might be colleagues or neighbors or friends you haven't met yet. But they're out there. And when you find them, when they find you, you'll understand what I learned that day. We're not meant to walk this life alone. We're meant to lift each other up, to see each other clearly, to remind each other that we matter. That's the real measure of success. Not the size of your bank account or the approval of people who refuse to see you, but the lives you've touched, the hearts you've healed, the moments of genuine connection you've created. Thank you, Dorothy. Thank you, James, for seeing me, for saving me, for teaching me what love really looks like. And thank you to everyone listening. You matter more than you know. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps me continue sharing stories about kindness, connection, and the beautiful complexity of human relationships. And please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear about a time when a stranger showed you unexpected kindness, or when you were able to help someone in need. Your stories inspire me and remind us all that we're part of a larger human family bound together by compassion.